Chapter 7. Everything on a Waffle. I lose all my sweaters. Now that I knew how to deal with yeast, I was ready to join Uncle Jack the next time he showed the cinnamon house. He came home 2 nights later, saying he had an appointment set up for the next day at 4 o'clock. I baked the rolls that night and wrapped them in foil. When I got home from school the next day, I put on my good navy dress and went over to Miss Perfidy's house to get my matching cardigan. I even used a little of Uncle Jack's breath freshener, although no aftershave. I found myself slowing down as I approached Miss Perfidy's house. Uncle Jack thought it was strange that I didn't move my sweaters into his house. I said it was because the mothballs were protecting them, but really it was because I wanted to see Miss Perfidy now and then. We had a peculiar relationship. We didn't like each other much, but had lived through my parents' disappearance together. It gave us a kind of melancholy bond. I kicked brown leaves down the street. Fall was completely upon Cole Harbor. From October's orange crackling leaves to the mists and fogs that crept up from the ocean, climbing the hills and rolling in the valleys, I could see the ocean from Miss Perfidy's street, gray on top and frothing white as it tossed its way into the shore. They'd better hurry and get rescued, I thought, thinking of chilly winter storms ahead. When Miss Perfidy answered the door, I noticed that she had her dress on backwards. For the first time, it occurred to me that Miss Perfidy, who must be in the neighborhood of 104 years old, might be failing. It was a disturbing thought. As long as I had known her, which was all my life, Miss Perfidy had been old. You couldn't imagine Miss Perfidy being anything but old. At this stage of the game, with so much practice being old, she wasn't going to start making mistakes because she was getting old. From such established oldness, there was nowhere to go but dead. This gave me an uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. It also made me a little mad at Miss Perfidy, like she wasn't trying. "Come to get a sweater?" said Miss Perfidy. It was a statement, not a question. "I need my good sweater. I'm helping Uncle Jack later. I began, but Miss Perfidy was already out of the room. Going through the living room, I noticed that the doilies were missing from the chair arms. I had lived with Miss Perfidy long enough to know her cleaning routine. On Tuesdays, Miss Perfidy vacuumed the furniture. She took the doilies off for this and returned them later. I followed Miss Perfidy into the kitchen. "Are you vacuuming today?" I asked. "What? What's that? Why, Primrose, you know very well I don't vacuum on Thursdays. This is Thursday." "Well, your doilies are gone," I said. "No, they're not. They're just where they always are." "On the chair arms?" I asked. "Where else would they be?" "I don't know," I said. I saw a funny-shaped pan on the stove and decided to change the subject. "You've got a new pan." Miss Perfidy looked at me through narrowed eyes as I sat down across from her at the kitchen table. She was pouring herself a cup of raspberry tea and eating stale, soft tea biscuits, recipe to follow. Her cookies always tasted of mothballs. She pushed the cookies in my direction, and I ate one to see if the flavor had changed since I had left, but it hadn't, and I looked around to see where I could spit it out without her noticing. "I got the pan from my sister, Miss Claire Witherspoon, who just visited. The one who lives down in Comox. I know I told you about her. She is widowed now. She and her husband run a hardware store that she still owns, but hires young people to run. She had them left over, crepe pans. She used to run a serious hardware store with serious hardware. Then everybody got all la-dee-da, could afford to start cooking for recreation, and she had to start carrying notions like crepe pans, fondue pots, cappuccino machines. The problem is, Primrose, she can't tell when a fad is over, so she always ends up with leftover junk. And so I acquired that crepe pan." We were silent for a moment. Miss Perfidy, because she was deep in thought, and I, because I had a mouthful of stale biscuit that I couldn't bring myself to swallow or spit out. "At least I think that's where I got the pan," said Miss Perfidy. "What do you mean?" I asked, finally choking down the cookie. "Lately, I seem to remember things incorrectly," said Miss Perfidy, rubbing her forehead. "You mean you've lost your memory?" I asked. "No, I've somehow acquired a whole new memory of things that never happened. The other day, I called up Margaret Miller to thank her for having me to Sunday dinner, Some of my old employers invited me for Sunday dinner, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, Miss Perfidy sniffed. I felt guilty, but how could my family have Miss Perfidy over for Sunday dinner when 2/3 of them were floating around in the Pacific? I imagined asking Miss Perfidy to share a turkey TV dinner with me and Uncle Jack. I didn't bear thinking about. Margaret made a roast chicken. Little Sarah played the piano for us afterwards. Of course, she isn't really so little anymore, and I had the distinct impression that she did not want to perform. I find that children never want to perform when you ask them to, but you can't stop them when all you want is some peace and quiet. Uh-huh, I said, thinking as I had so many times that Miss Perfidy should never have become a babysitter. Naturally, I thanked her even though she had put too much sage in the stuffing, and I could have done without the recital. That's when she told me that I had never been there for Sunday dinner. She said that they don't even have Sunday dinner. That Sunday dinner is usually canned soup and grilled cheese or something. Of course, that's true in many homes nowadays. Sunday dinner used to be a sociable meal after church. It's too bad it didn't happen because I remembered it clear as day, and I had quite a pleasant time. My, I said. She also said that Sarah doesn't play the piano. We sat and thought about this. It could be worse, I said finally. You could not remember things that did happen. My mind is sharp as a tack. I probably have a better memory than you that way, anyway. She'd almost have to, I thought, with all those extra memories floating around in there. Well, as long as you had a nice time, I ventured. I mean, if the memories are nice, you can enjoy all kinds of things that you didn't have to do. I've got lots of times to do things, grumbled Miss Perfidy. I've got nothing but time. It might be nice if I had some control. You don't see that this is what is so bothersome. I've got no control, and I won't know tomorrow if you really came over for a sweater or if it was just another memory of something that never happened. Now I must go. I have an appointment in town. She paused and looked troubled, I think. It must really bother her, I thought, because this was the most Miss Perfidy had ever talked to me. Miss Perfidy was getting her pocketbook off the coat rack in the hall, so I ran upstairs. I'll just get my sweater, I said. I went down the hall to the guest bedroom, opened the dresser, and ran back to the landing. Miss Perfidy, I called. The front door banged as Miss Perfidy left. I went back to stare morosely at the dresser. All my sweaters were gone. Oh, Miss Perfidy. Reminds me of my grandma, who doesn't remember much anymore. It gets sad when they really don't remember anything, but at this stage, it's kind of funny. Your reflection response question for today is a vocabulary definition. This is where I give you a word in context from the text, and then you write down what that word means. You are allowed to look it up on a dictionary, but you need to write your definition in your own words. So I might suggest that you try to write your own definition first before you look it up, because sometimes when you look it up and you have what the dictionary says, it's harder to think of your own definition. So our word today was on page, let me find it. It's peculiar, but I don't know where it is. I'll pause and find it. There it is, I found it. We had a peculiar relationship. P-E-C-U-L-I-A-R. So your response question is to define the word peculiar. Here's your recipe for the day. Tea biscuits. This is really two recipes. One is for the delicious tea biscuits, and the other is for Miss Perfidy's tea biscuits. For delicious tea biscuits, mix 1/3 cup of shortening with 1 cup of white sugar. Add 1 egg and beat until light. Then add 2 cups of cake flour, 1 teaspoon baking powder, 1/8 teaspoon baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon salt, and 1/4 cup of sour milk. Mix it all up. Add 2 teaspoons pure vanilla extract. Drop by the spoonful on a greased cookie sheet. Bake in a 350-degree oven until done. If you prefer Miss Perfidy's tea biscuits, double the baking soda and leave out the vanilla. Then, age for 10 days in a drawer full of mothballs. They won't be tasty, but they'll be authentic. Have a great day.